Hi, and welcome to BizTech's Aha, the coaching show. This is a show that's all about coaching and is produced in partnership with Corporate Coaching Academy. I'm Brian Fernandez, and today we'll explore the conversation around scaling through business coaching. Now, to give us insights on this very interesting topic, we have Dennis Fu, business scaling coach, professional coach, strategic advisor, and mentor. Now, he's got over 25 years of leadership experience in corporate management in various multinationals in the greater China market, served across several positions, is a certified coach, advisor, and mentor from various global leadership management and coaching institutions. And without further ado, I want to welcome Dennis. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I'm excited to have this opportunity to talk to you and connect with our guests, our friends, uh, live here today. Thank you.
So, Dennis, for a start, could you give the audience an overview of your background and then how you actually transitioned into coaching?
All right, I've been a corporate person in China for more than 25 years. Worked for multinationals, various multinational companies in the consumer sectors, and after having done that, so I kind of like doing some consulting work. And in the initial stage, I was helping companies in terms of how they grow. And I realized that as much as I know about running a company, leading a company, managing a company, a big team, more than 1,000 people, more than a couple of billions in renminbi, and I realized that I think I know a lot. Always as a leader, you always think that you know a lot, and until I decided to enhance my skill set through some coaching institutions in the United States. And through that, I got to know a bit more about how do I go about helping companies in terms of scaling up and in terms of growing. And because when I was running a company, I have challenges in terms of managing or leading. And if I want to help companies, I need to know what are the things I need to, have a better perspective, better approach to it. And that's why I went through all the last 5 or 6 years. I've been going through a lot of learnings and certifications more to enhance my skill sets. So my work is actually helping business owner, leaders, as well as their team in terms of scaling their business, but in the sense of helping them to be better in what they are. So I went into coaching and through this ICF coaching through CCA is more to understand the nuance about coaching. Coaching, as you know, there's a lot of coaching, whether it's just football coaching or uh, business coaching, or whether it's for life coaching or whatever. But it's not just about asking questions, but also understanding how to go about it. And that's why I'm in here today, talking to you, but also in my work is to support companies in terms of how to be a better in what they are doing. So through my coaching work, so not just providing a framework or the approaches, but also through the coaching framework in terms of talking to them, in terms of having a conversation, in terms of asking questions with them.
And Dennis, I think one of the key things, and that's the focus of today's show, it's about scaling through business coaching. Now, one of the things is having been in China for over 25 years, you've seen a lot of businesses come from nothing and scaling to become not only regional giants, but then even global players. When preparing for this show, we talked about people like BYD. BYD didn't really exist 25 years ago when you started out in China. Could you give us some insights into some of the observations that you've seen in terms of how businesses scale in China?
I think, scaling is not just whether in China or even in Malaysia or elsewhere. It's almost the same. When you start, you run a business and you want to kind of like grow. You open an outlet, a restaurant, you kind of like develop the business, and then as you see success, you want to open more and more branches or more and more stores. So the same with BYD when they first started, they kind of like just do the business, just go about doing it. But when you scale a business, it's not just about growing the business as it is before, but you talk about certain management process, certain leadership process. There's a lot of processes that need to go into play to have a scale so that you can scale. It's not just like running a business just like it is. So for example, like you open a restaurant and you say, okay, I want to scale. I just want to open branches as much as what I'm good at. Maybe you can open them to 5 branches, 10 branches, but you want to do until 1,000 branches. You want to do to 10,000 branches. The challenge is different. So when you talk about scaling, it's about the process in terms of what are the elements involved in terms of scaling that up. So China kind of like look back, if you talk about BYD, or not just BYD, most of the Chinese company, the owners are very involved in the business. There's everywhere making connections, just like a lot of Chinese man companies here as well as they grow. But as they grow to a certain size, they need other people to run the business for them. And that is where certain practices, certain scaling approach have to come in. So in this case, you have the what do you call it, strategic planning process involved. So when you talk about strategy planning process involved is you talk about leadership, you talk about strategy, you talk about talent, you talk about you know your strategy priority, you talk about your system, you talk about your cash flows, you talk about the even cultures, or you talk about all the key elements that's important in terms of scaling. But at the same time, scaling is not just about just going to do what it is about, but also in terms of developing your people. So like China, I think when like for example, like some of the companies like BYD when they first started, they're opening everywhere. But when you reach to a certain level, they have to bring some modern management practice. So they send their people for MBA, they send their people for management practice to understand what is it about. And you see that the new concept of management comes into play probably towards the end of 2000, maybe close to 2010, just before the Olympics, and then the World Expo period. And so that change, and then come into 2010 onwards, there's another change again. So China has also gone through a lot of changes in terms of having management, what do you call it, management practice to come into play to help that to scale. But again, is like in my realm, scaling, helping businesses is about supporting management, supporting the business owner, supporting the business leader in terms of how to go about. It's still a new approaches or mindset for a lot of people. You know what I'm trying to say? But there is, what I say is that, but certainly a lot of companies that want to scale need to understand the dynamics and need to find ways to go about it. So in this case, like for example, like going back again, BYD, when they go through that changes, but they also keep looking at ways, for example, like go to institutions, they go to groups, or they do go to some management institutions to enhance the people's skill set. I don't know whether I kind of like explain that clearly to you or not, but in that sense.
And that's a good insight, because that gives a lot of us really some historical background in terms of how these Chinese companies sort of made the transition to the global powerhouses that they are today. And one of the key takeaways should be just from this is it took time and they evolved over time.
Yeah,
So
I mean, let me add on a bit as well. Uh, I mean, MBAs is, I mean, I know MBAs has evolved in Malaysia or elsewhere for a long time, but China kind of like pick up uh, speed maybe from 2010 onwards. In 2005, there's some MBA program, but it doesn't go on the large scale basis. So 2010 onwards. So today you see a lot of them have, management, qualifications, whether they're going abroad or even within China. So a lot of them I mean, there are like CEIBS, there's something like at least 50 institutions in China that's preparing the young, the management groups or the young talents in terms of preparing them from, even the second generations of businesses, or third generations, I mean, the new generations of business owner, they are also highly qualified, highly educated, highly experienced in, I mean, kind of like informed about what is happening outside China and in terms of management theory. So they are also grasping a lot of this into helping them to be a better in how to run the business, how to be better in what it is. So it's not just about what you read in the West, but maybe the China context is a bit more, more China specifically, more cultural adjusted. That's number one. The other thing is like coaching as well. Coaching only come into play the last 5 years or so in China. I mean, it may be around for a long time elsewhere, but China kind of like pick up speed just in the last 5 years in China.
So in a
So,
China context, who was doing the coaching? Are the senior executives, are the Chinese entrepreneurs receptive to senior executives like you coaching them?
uh, this is a very big question. I would say, uh, I mean, right now it's still very prevalent with the multinationals in terms of coaching. I think the local company, they have some understanding of it, but I think it's not too that prevalent yet. But certainly they still very much the what should I say, the classroom top down, you know, information is kind of like uh, relaying out, that sort of approach. But coaching is still more the foreign company, multinational companies, some westernized companies, more the that sort of space. So not to the other space yet. But what I'm trying to tell you is just now I say coaching is really picking up speed. So more and more of them aware, and you see the second generations are educated abroad as well, and the younger generations of talents that are coming up, they are also exposed whether it's locally or abroad. So I think more and more coming out, but I don't have that percentage, or I don't know what is it like in terms of the mix. But I know that more and more is coming out on that.
So Dennis, now bringing it back to 2025, and Dennis Fu, the coach, who's coaching his clients on scaling their businesses. What are some of the key things that you coach your clients, and what is your methodology?
Now, in my case, is mostly I start with asking them in terms of their challenges. How do they go about in terms of growing their business? How do they go about even doing, you know, do they have a budgeting process? How do they see their business in the next 3 to 5 years? Where they want to be? So that kind of question, kind of like sometimes when you ask that question, they oh, I just do a business. So kind of like put them in, a frame and say, okay, what do I need to do? Then along the line is like, okay, now I have to talk to them and understand, of course, through questioning, asking where do you want to be? What's the, I mean, when I say that, actually most of the time is I ask them question. How do you see the business in 3 to 5 years? And what are your challenges that you have? What keep you awake middle of the night? What, uh, how is your leadership team? Are you happy with them? And how do you compete out in the marketplace? What is the thing that you have that is strong that you see that the business can grow further? And how does the customer view you in terms of your business? So I ask those type of questions to get them to think about. Then I work with them through a strategy planning process. In part, this is the core part of it, and that was entailed in terms of looking at uh, their leadership team. So when you talk about leadership team, whether the leadership team align or not, because China man companies, or in this case, most companies is like the leaders seem to know everything. But actually, the leaders seem to know everything. Is that the right way? Sometimes it's not the right way. So that's my job. I say, what is your role? What your role should be? Because your role is not to be there and then do everything. Because you cannot be. first you do not know everything, and you cannot be everywhere as well. So how are you going to scale the business? How are you going to grow the business? Especially China is so big and so many stores. I mean, so many cities, so many places to go. How can you be? So that's where I help them in terms of getting understanding, getting that, that granularity to know what they need to change. Of course, it's not easy to go and tell them, then tomorrow they will change. No, there will be a lot of discussions and interactions, go through a process. And in most cases, let me tell you, is also they have to come to the realization they're able to accept that. And that's where the coaching come in. And the coaching is about not about uh, what you can do, what you are, how good you are, but who are you? Your emotion, your energy, your value, your purpose. Those are very important. Those you need to get that clarity to come into place. Because if you don't get that clarity to come in place, when you do the other part that is about what you're doing, where you want to be, how are you? Sooner or later you'll hit the wall. Sooner or later there will be a problem, and the thing that you're doing will not get traction. So my work is working on the strategic planning process, but at the same time, I talk a lot about, I spend a lot of time in terms of coaching them, in terms of them themselves. And then obviously along the way is about, in part of it, working on the culture, working in terms of the strategy priorities, working in terms of, in this case, could be OKR, and then in this case, working in terms of the leadership alignments, whether they're having the right mix of people in play to help them to grow. Because sometimes the problem is the team doesn't align or doesn't communicate, doesn't, what should I say, doesn't gel together well. You know what I'm trying to say? And so that's my work. So a bit long-winded, but I hope that helps.
Dennis, one of the things that you would and just reading between the lines and obviously speaking to many leaders over the years, one of the biggest challenges then is, of course, making them transition from trying to manage everything into the business into actually letting go and leading the business, leading a team of a next level of managers or senior managers. How often have you found that that's the sort of the biggest leap forward that needs to be done for a business before they can scale? Because otherwise there is a danger that the founder is the limiter of the business.
Yeah, it's not just. Every founders, every business owners, every leaders, they come from somewhere. You know, whether they are finance person, marketing person, factory persons, or whatever salesperson. They come from somewhere, and they like to do that. They may be very good in selling. So okay, I start a business selling, and then I've been so much good at selling. But they have to transition when they run a business because they have people to support them, work with them. And especially when they have a certain size of the business, they need to scale. Otherwise, how they do things, they can bring the business down. So I have example of people. One particular person is very factory oriented. He's very operation oriented. He's very on the ball in the factory. And in fact, that's how he started the business because people call him up and then he's been supplying and people like his product. But when he first started, was good. But over time, he realized that, he come to a problem because he spent so much time in the factory. The sales, not the sales, the marketing, the sales, the finance, things didn't gel. There's a lot of infighting. So he need to step away and understand the role. His role is no longer in the factory. He need to get the best people to run the factory. And his role, what is his role? I always ask him, what is your role? That's why the question I asked earlier about where do you see the business going to be in 5 years' time? Would you keep the people that you have right now? No, I don't like them. Then why are you keeping them? So those are the questions. So what I'm trying to say is people transit, from different level, from different function role to where they are. They need to realize, but how? Sometimes they go through the process of failures, they hit the wall, then they make changes. And sometimes it can be costly, isn't it? So that's where we come into play, but helping them. I think in the West, in the European market, in the American market, the more people on the coaches like us can help them. There's not many in Asia. So if you have people, I mean, I know there are groups like Restage groups, or there are groups like maybe Restage is one of them, like EO groups, or some of these what do you call it, business enterprising organizations. Maybe they bring them together, help them. There are these sort of groups around. But is it enough or not? Because there's so many businesses out there. Some of them are not in the group. So that could be the challenge, So I believe companies having somebody to help them, they will have more clarity. They will run the business in a more structured, organized way, and they will have better success.
And Dennis, this has been a really fascinating conversation. But before we leave, what are some of the key elements you think that a coach should work with a business leader to do in order to set the foundations right for success to scale the business?
I think, I've not, I think I shouldn't use the word thing is like giving down. I feel the most important is based on my experience over the years working on my own as well. I mean, running a companies as well right now, working with companies in terms of scaling the business. I think we start with that leader or the owner or the person, the CEO of the company, realizing that he can be a good thing, but he also can be a problem. So he need to come to that realizations, and I think that
Okay.
takes a bit more challenge, and because like I say earlier, is about understanding themselves, their emotion, their energy, their purpose, and what's their legacy going to be. Because that itself is then is about how they help to make sure that they do the thing that is right for the company. Because you need the people to do the thing for you. You need the people to run the thing for you. You need the people. There are better people out there. And today we talk about AI and you talk about digital informations and you talk about market competitions. You're not going to be everywhere, isn't it? But your people can be a lot better than you if you know how to help them. So I think the important thing is them. Obviously, understanding what you need to do. What's your vision like? Getting clarity on that. And the other thing is that your stakeholders that you need to connect. Who are your stakeholders? Your investors, your bankers, your suppliers, your customers. So you need to how you manage that. And the other thing is in terms of your roadmap, your growth roadmap, your vision, but what is when you say your vision, what is your growth roadmap? What is the growth roadmap that you need to have? And that is like a strategy planning process that you need to come into play. I mean, to bring into play to help them. And so that is also about setting their priorities, because sometimes there may be some crisis that may happen, isn't it? So when you have a
Mhm.
crisis, how are you going to react to that if you don't have a strategy priority? So that is where the strategy priority come into play, because when you have a crisis or is there issues, turbulent changes happening, then you look at the priorities, because the priority will help you to make changes that is needed so you don't affect the business. Otherwise, is it like I was telling you earlier, it's like, oh, there's like during the COVID, face mask and hand glove is doing well. Why don't we do that? Not that you cannot do, but you have the resources, you have the people to do that. If you have the people and they're not doing anything, okay, fine, go and do it. But you don't even have enough people, but yet you go and do that business. And what happened? You derail the other part of the business. So what I'm trying to say is, first is the leader. Second is your vision. Third is you have to look at, yourself. What are the communication skills? What are the things that you need to look at in terms of your leadership? Then you, of course, you got to look at your, what is the roadmap that you want to grow, and your decision making process. The other thing I want to forget to say is, how do you make decisions? Because every day you make so many decisions. Who is helping you to make the best decision? Who are the people? Your leadership team? Who else? So those are the things that I think businesses leader need to understand that because you make decision all the time, and are you making the best decision? So, and how do you go about it?
Dennis, this has been such an informative conversation. I've really learned a lot. Thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show. It's really been a pleasure.
Well, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. I hope it's useful for you and people who listen in. Yeah, thank you.
I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to BizTech's Aha, the coaching show, which is produced in partnership with Corporate Coaching Academy. This show will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners and our social media platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in.